Unemployment has to jump 40, 50% in my view. We need to see pain in the economy. We need to remind people that they work for the employer, not the other way around. I mean, there's been a systematic change where employees feel the employer is extremely lucky to have them, as opposed to the other way around. So it's a dynamic that has to change. We've got to kill that attitude, and that has to come through hurting the economy, which is what the whole global, the world is trying to do. The governments around the world are trying to increase unemployment to get that to some sort of normality. And we're seeing it. I think every employer now is seeing it. I mean, there is definitely massive layoffs going off. People might not be talking about it, but people are definitely laying people off, and we're starting to see less arrogance in the employment market, and that has to continue because that will cascade across the cost.
What this CEO is explaining to people is how industries and governments work together to impoverish its people in order to obtain cheap labor to keep production increasing. This is what you're hearing them say. This is why it is imperative that you learn to localize your economy by supporting small businesses and entrepreneurs in your community, because large corporations want to starve you into poverty in order to force you to work for cheap wages.
We have people decided they didn't really want to work so much anymore through COVID, and that has had a massive issue on productivity. Tradies have definitely pulled back on productivity. They have been paid a lot to do not too much in the last few years, and we need to see that change. We need to see unemployment rise. Unemployment has to jump 40, 50% in my view. We need to see pain in the economy. We need to remind people that they work for the employer, not the other way around. I mean, there's been a systematic change where employees feel the employer is extremely lucky to have them, as opposed to the other way around. So,
hot labor summer. From Hollywood to hotels, workers have been walking off the job. Recent data from Cornell University shows around 119,000 U.S. workers were on strike as of May. You can see a fraction of that were on strike in 2021 and 2022. And the demands from employees appear to be the same across different industries: better conditions, protections, and pay. For more on this.
In retaliation for this newfound confidence created by the American worker, the government and big business has decided to retaliate by breaking the spirits of the American people using raising interest rates, making housing less affordable, and increasing unemployment is the objective of big government and big business in order to break the spirits of the American people.
It's a dynamic that has to change. We've got to kill that attitude, and that has to come through hurting the economy, which is what the whole global, the world is trying to do. The governments around the world are trying to increase unemployment to get that to some sort of normality. And we're seeing it. I think every employer now is seeing it. I mean, there is definitely massive layoffs going off. People might not be talking about it, but people are definitely laying people off, and we're starting to see less arrogance in the employment market, and that has to continue because that will cascade across the cost balance.
Okay. So,
how you doing? My name is Antonio. My page is Unapologetically Black ADOS. I ask that you like and subscribe to the page. What you are seeing is a CEO explain to you the methods that are used in order to keep a desperate group of people so that they can always have cheap labor. This was done initially in America through race. See, you always notice that blacks were paid less than whites. Blacks were forced into areas and prevented from having jobs. This desperation forced blacks to accept less pay than that of their white counterparts for so long. This tactic is also used with the illegal immigrants who have to come across the border by impoverishing Mexico and keeping Mexico economy stripped, that allows American farmers to have a cheap labor source of people who are willing to cross the border, do seasonal labor for cheap costs. So you criminalize these people and put them in a position where they cannot demand any type of higher wages, or they don't have any leverage. This is a system that is used against the masses of people collectively, black or white. The real counter to this, and I need my black people to understand, is for you to localize your economy. Is to start to support small businesses in your community and build small business in your community and circulate your wealth that way. Our government have worked and passed policies that benefited big businesses to the detriment of small businesses. And you have to ask, why would they do that when the greatest employer in America has always been small business, not big business? According to Small Business Administration, small companies create 1.5 million jobs annually and account for 64% of new jobs created in the United States. Small business generate the majority of jobs in the United States. That common concept has been fueled by years by policymakers. Both Republicans and Democrats, U.S. presidents include small businesses drive the economy engine. The argument goes and do more than any other sector to spur jobs and growth. The U.S. Small Business Administration lends credence to these claims, citing internal report that shows, for example, that the small companies accounted for 64% of new jobs created in the U.S. between 1993 and 2011. Small businesses represent roughly 95% of all U.S. companies, are certainly important to the nation's economy growth, providing employment for roughly half the U.S. employees.
Workforce participation rate tells us which percentage of the entire working age population is economically active. In other words, it tells us which percentage of the people capable of working are actually working, or at least looking for a job. Let's assume you live in a country with 10 million working age people. We'll also assume 5 million are currently working and 500,000 are actively looking for work. So, we have 5.5 million economically active people. In this scenario, the labor force participation rate is 55%. The unemployment rate, on the other hand, tells us which percentage of the total labor force is currently unemployed, but actively looking for work. To figure out how many people are jobless, but actively looking for work, the authorities figure out how many people are receiving unemployment benefits and other forms of.
America has a market participation rate right now around 62%. Meaning you have a 48% of working age group of people who are not currently employed for various reasons. A lot of those reasons would be the lack of jobs in various communities, that you have to have various transportation to get to, such as in inner city where black community is. In order to get to the working wage jobs, you will have to have transportation. Meaning you can't have, you have to have your driver's license valid, no licenses against it. Your car will have to make sure all your lights and all that thing that work in your tags, all that will have to be up to par, which is to some people is simple, but to others, depending on your condition and circumstances, might not be that feasible or within their reach to obtain. And this forces a group of people to be poor, and that group of people constantly go to temp services and work. I don't have none on me right now. I got to grab them from the warehouse later on the day. What do you have some? Later on the day, about 1 o'clock, something like that. Oh, Martin Luther King and Locust. By Fast and Friendly. Oh, that's right over there. Oh. Okay, I'll be over here tomorrow morning. All right. Yeah. This is so you understand that the U.S. has a higher unemployment rate than most. The U.S. labor force participation rate is 62.80%. Now you have to understand 7% of those people work 2 jobs. So you add a 55% people working participation in the job market rate. The U.S. labor force participation rate is at 62.80% compared to 62.60% last month and 62.30% last year. This is lower than the long-term average of 62.84%. The U.S. labor force participation rate provided by the Bureau of Labor Statistics is the sum of total number of employed persons and unemployed persons looking for work in the United States as a percentage of the working age population. Historically, there has been a negative trend from the 2000s of 67.10% participation to the 2010 62.50% participation, as the baby boomers age group has begun to shift out of the working age population. Also, in particularly dire economic conditions, the labor force participation rate can drop as people give up looking for work. So you have to understand when you in these when you in these urban areas that you do not have working wage jobs, that is what they consider the non-working class. Not because they don't want work, because there's no work feasible to sustain a family. So you have to not buy into the lie that white people are feeding you that there's jobs out there, black people. You have to understand their objective is to economically starve you out in order to force you to work for peanuts. Black people have to understand how the unemployment rate is composed. And it comes out of what is called the non-farm labor report, which is done out of St. Louis Federal Reserves. Now, what you have is called the market participation rate. Currently, America has a 62% market participation rate, but that is a very misleading market participation rate because the gig economy was included in as employment, meaning people driving Uber and that type of stuff is considered employed, but that is not really employed. I don't want to get off into how the gig economy affects you and prevents you from having any benefits, and it's basically not even a living wage position. But so you have what is considered a 42% market of non-market participation rate. And that non-market participation rate comes out of various reasons. Those reasons could be because you live in areas that lack jobs that pay living wage, like in the Milwaukee area, which was a heavy industrial job area at one time, that now is our community. The only jobs really within the Milwaukee inner city area are all service jobs. The A.O. Smiths, the Briggs and Stratton factories that did exist within the inner city of Milwaukee, they did not refurbish once closed down and put another factory there. They destroyed those buildings all the way to ensure that they economically castrated the black community. So the jobs that are available to you in your community are only service jobs. Walmart, working at the auto parts store, Aldi's, the beauty supply store. Those are the jobs that are left to you within your community. All the other jobs, you have to go outside of your community to obtain the living wage jobs, which is $22.40 an hour or better. You have to leave outside of your community again, lowering your actual wages because of your transportation costs and the times it takes for you to get back and forth to work. Not to mention the fact that you have to have everything up to par in order to go back and forth and work them jobs. Like your car have to be up to par as far as your registration, your plates, your all your license, everything got to constantly working. All those things that, when coming from a condition of in debt and in poverty, are difficult to completely achieve. And on top of that, you still have to worry about being over-ticketed going back and forth out to those white communities. So it's a lot of things that lead to your low employment black people in your community that you are continuously overlooking. So it is imperative that you learn to localize your economy in order to create jobs and opportunity from yourselves, in order to counter some of these obstacles that have been created in order to permanently impoverish you based off your race. Working age population, age 15 to 64, all United States was 208,071,240.5 people. Person in June 2023, according to the United States, reached a record high of 208,071,701.16. Let's see. Working age population. And I want you to understand that historical working age population is 15 to 64. All for the United States reached a record high. Now this is in the 208 million. Is the working age population in the United States. Where else you have a payroll pay stub of 157 million people receiving paychecks, and out of that, 7% of those people are people receiving 2 paychecks. This is why we have a low market participation. This is why the unemployment rate is a scam, in order for you not to be aware of the economic conditions of America. I need you to understand that only 158 million pay stubs went out as of any given month this year. And 7% of those pay stubs went to the same person. Right? So you're talking you take another 9 million, so you're talking around 49 million people receive paychecks as of any given week this month, or even given pay period this month within 2023, while you have a working age population of 208,716,000 and something people. So what you have to understand is that there is way more amount of people available for work than there are actual jobs, greater than what they're talking about when you say 3% unemployment. But that unemployed group is set there by design and intention in order to have an already available workforce whenever a company needed that's willing to accept lower cost environment, lower wages, all out worse conditions, because they have been impoverished due to the lack of employment opportunity within their environment or due to their social circumstances, create their greater desperation. And you black people have been marked as that group of people to be left in dire condition in order to work for as minimum as possible. The only way that you are going to counter this is by creating your own economy and circulating wealth within your own community and within yourselves. You have to build yourselves up. Their objective is to keep you as an impoverished, poor person who is willing to work for as minimum as possible.
Let's bring in Seth Harris. He was the former acting U.S. Labor Secretary in 2013 under then President Obama. Seth, thank you so much for being with us. So your alma mater, Cornell University, has found major worker strikes increased by more than 50% in 2022. The Labor Department says that's the second highest level in 2 decades. So what's going on?
Well, John, I'd say that there are 3 things. One is the pandemic, the second is profits, and the third is the political economy. Workers are very angry about how they were treated during the pandemic, particularly frontline workers. They put themselves at risk. Their employers didn't do everything they could to protect them. And so workers felt that the only way to protect themselves going into the future was to come together with their co-workers and organize. Profits at the same time rose dramatically. Think of Amazon, think of UPS. They were making money hand over fist, but they were not sharing that money with the workers who were producing those profits. And finally, we have very tight labor markets, very low unemployment rate, and a president who is very pro-union. All of that.
For the unions, the railroad union workers, Biden did not stand with the union. He stood with big corporations. Part 2, I'm going to explore how the government has consistently sided with big business in order to assist in impoverishing its people, and especially the black community. And I will show you how Biden has sided with big government over unions since he's been in office.